Why did a complex, multi-story city rise from the dry plains of northern Mexico, thrive for centuries in a landscape of scarcity, and then quietly fall into silence, leaving behind only fragile walls and unanswered questions? At first, Paquime does not announce itself. The land around it feels wide and restrained, shaped by wind, dust, and distant mountains. Light moves slowly across open ground. The air is dry. The horizon seems endless. Nothing here suggests that a major urban center once stood in this valley. And yet, beneath the surface, traces remain. Walls emerge from the soil. Doorways open into empty rooms. Narrow passages lead toward collapsed courtyards. The ground still holds the memory of movement. Paquime, also known as Casas Grandes, rests in northern Chihuahua, where desert, grassland, and mountain foothills quietly converge. Rain arrives without warning. Rivers swell briefly, then fade. Summers bring heat and sudden storms. Winters bring cold, still nights. Life here has always required patience and careful balance. From above, the ruins reveal something unexpected. Instead of scattered dwellings, there is structure. Blocks of rooms connect into vast complexes. Walls rise in layered tiers. Open spaces appear carefully placed. Pathways link separate sections into a unified whole. The city does not feel accidental. It feels planned. Even in decay, Paquime carries intention. Adobe walls, once smooth and pale, now soften back into earth. Wooden beams have vanished. Roofs have collapsed into shadow. Yet the outline of a multi-story settlement remains clear. Some structures once rose 4 or 5 levels high. Windows opened toward shared courtyards. Stairways guided movement upward and inward. What makes this more striking is its isolation. Paquime lies far from major rivers and coastlines. It sits among dry valleys and distant passes. For a city of this scale to rise here, something unusual must have sustained it. Some system, some rhythm, some long-term understanding of land and water. No written records remain. No voices explain its purpose. The city speaks only through form and placement. And so the question rests quietly over every broken wall. How did this place come to exist here at all? To understand how Paquime took shape, the valley around it must be read slowly. This land is not empty. Beneath its dry surface, quiet patterns unfold. Snowmelt from distant mountains feeds small rivers. Summer storms send brief surges across open ground. Underground layers hold moisture long after the surface has dried. For those who learned to observe these rhythms, the valley offered possibility. Paquime was built near the Casas Grandes River, a modest waterway that shifts with the seasons. It disappears during dry months and returns after heavy rains. Over time, this fragile source became the foundation of something larger. Channels were carved into earth. Ditches guided flow. Reservoirs collected runoff. Water was stored, shared, and released with careful timing. These systems were precise rather than forceful. Slopes were measured. Walls were angled. Floodwater was slowed instead of blocked. Drought was met with preparation. The city did not fight its environment. It learned from it. Around these water networks, buildings expanded. Early structures were simple, shaped from packed earth and wood. Over generations, they grew denser. Rooms multiplied. Walls thickened. Levels rose. Adobe bricks formed from soil and straw were dried beneath open skies and stacked layer by layer. New spaces were added beside older ones. Corridors were extended. Courtyards reshaped. Instead of replacing the past, Paquime absorbed it. Its architecture became a record of time, holding many phases within the same walls. Fields spread beyond the core. Crops followed irrigation lines. Storage areas formed near living spaces. Workshops appeared beside open plazas. Everything suggests long-term planning rather than short-term survival. Still, the scale remains puzzling. Why did growth concentrate here? Why did this valley become the center of such complexity? Water explains part of the answer. Architecture explains another, but neither fully explains the city's steady rise. Slowly, Paquime was becoming more than a settlement. It was becoming a carefully balanced system. As Paquime matured, its inner landscape grew more complex. The city was no loose collection of buildings. It formed a dense network of rooms, corridors, and open courts that folded into one another. From above, the layout appears almost maze-like, with thick earthen walls shaping slow, winding movement. Walking through the city would have been a gradual experience, guided by turns, changing light, and shifting spaces. Some structures rose higher than others, creating a quiet, tiered skyline of adobe forms. Upper levels captured cooler air and wider views across the valley. Lower rooms remained sheltered by thick walls that softened desert heat. The architecture responded to climate with restraint, conserving warmth in winter and easing heat in summer. Specialized spaces begin to emerge within this pattern. Certain rooms were designed for storage, sealed and dim. Others opened onto shared courtyards, encouraging gathering and exchange. Distinctive features, including T-shaped doorways and aligned openings, repeat throughout the complex. These patterns were not decorative. They reflect shared standards passed down over generations. Water systems were woven directly into the city. Channels ran beneath plazas. Drains carried runoff away from foundations. Small reservoirs sat near central buildings. Even enclosures for brightly colored birds appear integrated into the urban fabric, hinting at connections that extended far beyond this valley. Objects found here suggest distant exchange. Shell, copper, and rare materials traveled across long routes to reach Paquime. Yet the city does not appear dependent on outside influence. Its strength lay in its internal organization. What remains difficult to explain is the level of coordination required to maintain such complexity. Multi-story buildings, irrigation channels, and storage areas demanded constant care. Walls needed repair, roofs required renewal, drainage systems had to remain clear. The city's endurance suggests steady participation across generations. In later phases, subtle changes appear. Some rooms were closed, certain passages narrowed, construction slowed. These were not signs of collapse, but of adjustment. Something within the system was shifting. By the time Paquime entered its final phase, the balance that had sustained it for generations appears to have grown fragile. The change did not arrive suddenly. There is no clear layer of destruction, no widespread burning, no sharp break in activity. Instead, the city seems to have slowed. Construction became less frequent. Some upper levels were no longer repaired. Water channels show signs of neglect. Storage spaces were sealed rather than renewed. In a landscape where survival depended on constant care, even small lapses mattered. When channels clogged, water spread unevenly. When walls weakened, rain and wind accelerated decay. When fewer hands returned to shared tasks, the system began to loosen. Environmental pressure may have played a role. Periods of drought could have reduced harvests. Shifts in rainfall may have strained reservoirs. Soil, worked for centuries, may have grown less productive. In such a carefully balanced setting, gradual changes could accumulate into lasting stress. Connections beyond the valley also appear to have weakened. Exchange networks that once carried rare materials and distant resources became less active. Without these links, Paquime grew more isolated. Its wide web of support slowly narrowed. Social rhythms likely shifted as well. A city built on cooperation depends on shared commitment. When that rhythm fades, decline does not arrive with noise. It arrives with empty rooms, untended channels, and quiet courtyards. Over time, activity drifted elsewhere. Roofs collapsed. Adobe softened in rain. Wind carried dust into abandoned passages. The city did not fall. It slowly returned to the earth that formed it. Today, Paquime remains as layered soil and fragile walls beneath open skies. Sunlight moves across broken edges. Shadows rest in doorways that once framed daily life. Water still flows nearby. The valley continues its rhythms, and the question returns, how did such a complex place rise here, endure for centuries, and then fade without force? The ruins suggest an answer shaped by care, coordination, and patience. They also suggest how easily those qualities can drift away. If this quiet journey through Paquime has stayed with you, you may wish to continue exploring these ancient landscapes with us. And what do you feel mattered most in keeping this desert city alive for so long?